as I understand and have been told, this is an activist meeting. So I'll give a modest account of how we're doing things in Denmark and maybe a few tricks along the way as well, which may be useful. So it's called Take from the Campaign Trade. And when looking for a snappy opening remark for my presentation today, I came across when I landed in Gatwick yesterday that when you leave an airport, what we've all seen this, that there's no re-entry beyond this point. And I think that this is most fitting for what happens when you are in the official narrative of 9/11. Once you have seen there's something wrong, there's no way back. And that's why we are getting more and more, and it's growing every day because nobody goes the other way. For me, obviously the opening, what we would say the crucial moment, which for most people was seeing this event here, the decay or collapse of Building 7. I have to tell a little personal story because it is necessary for understanding why we're doing the way we're doing it. And I saw this the fall of 2006, and up until that point, like most people, I didn't think much about it. And but seeing this was an eye-opener in two ways. First of all, this should be World Trade Center was a shock, since I believe there were 2 airliners and 2 skyscrapers. And second, courtesy of my education, I couldn't understand why this building was just falling down. So I had to push the button 10 times. And it took me, for most people, it took me several weeks or even months to realize that this is the most important event in our lifetime. So I started to look more into it, and at some point in early 2007, I wrote an essay, sent it to a newspaper. I had never done this before in my life, actually, to submit something for a newspaper. And it's a long story, but it actually got printed in a newspaper called Information, and it was a slip. It's always a slip when you get in the mainstream press. It's always a slip, either by a friend or by a young, innocent journalist. In this case as well. And this journalist called my essay, which only dealt with Building 7. It was physics and chemistry, and no pointing fingers. It was just the evidence. But he called it the 7th tower, which I have stayed with ever since because I think it has the Tolkien ring to it. There is a kind of mystery in the 7th tower. There were only 3 towers in the World Trade Center, but I think the 7th tower, it sounds, yeah, a little okay. This was in March 2007, and I was a very naive young man at that time. I believed when you stand up on a soapbox and tell the truth, it will roll on its own. It didn't. Absolutely nothing happened. And we are all used to that now, but I was not used to it at that time. So I realized that this would be a bottom-up approach, and I eventually put a presentation together, which premiered for the first time in the fall of 2007, and started to work on the Danes. And I have to present this little people. We're only 5.6 million. It's less than London. Central London is about half of Greater London, and it's very uniform. The country is small. Copenhagen is 1.2 million, 300 kilometers coast to coast. It's so small that my wife and I, we can meet one-on-one on everyone within the elite, the press, and we know them after all. This is the Shire. Unfortunately, the Danes are very much like hobbits, so they like to sit at home and have a good time, and they don't rock the boat. So this was the challenge, and this is what my presentation is about. 300 kilometers, this is the country. I live out here, just there's a bridge to Malmö, which actually is the second largest city of Sweden. And So I put down this presentation, which is in English is called A Fateful Building Collapse. And there is this is the summary. Actually, this is from a recent presentation in Iceland. And I have done this presentation a couple of times about contents. When I start this presentation, I tell the audience that it is what it is about. It's a factual presentation. It's only data, numbers, and evidence. And I take questions on the fly. That is, if you want to say something and it counts for you as well, just raise your hand and we take it on the spot. But questions must relate directly to what I'm saying up here, which means that when I'm giving this presentation, it is not allowed to forward any political statements. We do not discuss politics. And if somebody wants to know who carried out 9/11, I say, I do not know. All I know is the official narrative. It's wrong. And this is proven over a 2.5-hour period. Part 1 covers Building 7 and the National Institute of Science Technology report. Conclusion, the official report is called steel frame high-rises simply do not collapse. That's it. So really, you could do this in 10 minutes because steel frame high-rise, they simply do not collapse unless you blow them up. We have taken 5 minutes break. Part 2, we move to controlled demolitions, how to become a blast, and thermite and the Twin Towers, and eventually ends up with a consistent blast scenario. And this is what it takes 2 hours if you start with initiated people who knows nothing about physics and chemistry. Everybody has to understand all the way. It takes 2 hours to reach a consistent blast scenario, which I pretend to have. And then there's discussions which sometimes are very lively, and usually we are being kicked out by the officials who are running the room. This we hand out, we have supplementary material. We have a handout with trustworthy internet files. We give out 2 DVDs to every person coming up. One with the experts speak out from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and a compilation of videos with Danish subtitles. It's the mix. We have an essay of the NATO war in Afghanistan, which I can give it, which is ridiculous actually, how we got into war in Afghanistan. We have a translation of Alan Miller here, books, t-shirts, and merchandise. As usual, the usual stuff. And it's very important that we do this on a very regular basis. Every 6 weeks we give a presentation in Copenhagen. And when I'm speaking today, it is the 205th time I'm doing this, even though this is kind of special. I have done this in 15 countries, and so about 1/5 of the total number of presentations is outside Denmark. And this is how it works. It's very important to be persistent. And the real challenge, of course, and this is what I think what this meeting really is about, is to bring in new people. We are not interested in preaching to the saved. The challenge is to bring in new people every time. And we do that. And our means to do that are the 4 means of doing that: flyers, emails, word of mouth, and Facebook. And I'll go through them one-on-one. So we have a little group in Copenhagen of volunteers, activists, and we rally each time I'm giving this presentation. We rally about the Saturday preceding my presentation and passing out flyers, which is a means of discussing with people. And this is usual. This is going on all over the world. But what is special is that I'm sending out email invitations to thousands of people, because this is I realized very early on that the mainstream media, they are completely stonewalling, not completely, but they're stonewalling, and we do not get access to the mainstream media. So we had to realize that our task, our challenge is we have to get people in person by person, one-on-one. And emails, I think, is a very important vehicle for doing that. I'll show you what the email I'm sending out, what it looks like. Because it is this. So the recipient get this email, and it has, yeah, it is in Danish, of course. And here at the bottom, which is a little important, you can actually, there's a summary attached, and this translate, you do not have to answer this mail, but if you do not want to receive similar mails in the future, I ask you to print return on that one, and you'll be erased from my list. This is important in terms of legality of what you're doing, because if you're sending unrequested emails to somebody, it may be called spam, and then you're not allowed to send out spam, but you may invite people for a presentation, for a non-profit presentation. And so I comment on this. To send non-requested invitations is a little tricky, and I get many angry mails if people want to, call the police, stuff like that. But it is within the rules, it's within the law. You may send unrequested emails. But many of the emails I'm sending out are coming from people who are asking for this. And the technical comment to the activist here, what I'm doing can only be done in the post-program, mail program in Outlook Express. Because I have 10,000, I believe, addresses sorted in different folders. And I have to keep track on who do not want to speak with me. So they are putting in a special folder. I have a folder for journalists, for lawyers, for activists, for peace people, for unionists, for all kinds of people in different folders. So if I want to make a specific targeted mail list, I can do this very quickly. And it is useful. And one of the games of the fun my wife and I is having, do you have a question on the fly here, please?
I talked about free software.
Yeah.
Thunderbird will do this.
No. And you cannot export from Outlook Express to Thunderbird.
That may be true, but Thunderbird is very difficult.
Okay, but I'm stuck, I'm chained to Windows XP forever. It's true.
But you know it's no longer supported, and therefore vulnerable.
I know, it's hell, and it's getting worse every day. I'm trying to export this to Thunderbird, and I regretted it. It didn't work. Because if you export to Thunderbird, you get everything over in one big block. And I have 10,000 email addresses in 50 different folders.
We'll have email correspondence. We'll see if we can work that.
Yeah. But a little trick, say if you want to address a specific person, say the editor of a newspaper, saying you're lying or something like that. And what we do then is we put selected people on CC. So if you're addressing the editor, it takes, say, 10 or 50 journalists from the same newspaper. And then, so everybody can see that they all got this email. So they cannot deny it. You have to do something. And then you can put, say, 200 on BCC, who can sit back and laugh on the game which is going on here. But you have to be very careful on who you put on CC and who you put on BCC. The CCs are the ones who want to be embarrassed, but don't overdo it. I mean, there are people who are sending everything on 200 on CC. It means that you're using actually your quota. Don't harass them too much. But the real, what should we call them? People on top, they should know that we all know that they know, and we know. So, and also at the presentation, people are encouraged to write their email on a list. And I take that in, of course, and the next time. So it's accumulating, my list gets longer and longer, and now in Copenhagen, it's more than 6,200 names I'm sending out. Each time I'm giving a presentation, I'm pushing the bottom is not that easy. But I'm sending more than 6,000 emails because my files get bigger and bigger every time. And I call it's a big work because about 1% they push the return button and say, I don't want to hear from you anymore. Which means that I have to take them out from the system. And I have to store them to know that they don't want to talk with it. Because I don't want to harass any people beyond a certain point. You have a question?
Yeah. How have you collected the emails over the years?
Well, it's a mix of people who are asking for it, of activists, and also each time I add, say, 200 people to the list, which I'm picking from high school, from university, from wherever I could get access to it. And of course, they're the most sensitive, but about 1% say, I don't want it. Okay. I have to take them out to be kind, but persistent. And different people, of course, they relay my invitation to other people, so it's coming out to roughly what should be, I don't know how many. Facebook is, I'm not on Facebook. This is due to circumstances. If I did that, I would do nothing else. But other people are actually are making a Facebook page in my name, and this is from today, actually. And what's happening is, in the beginning I didn't care much, but I have to follow it, because if they put on something which I do not like, I have to ask them to take it down immediately. And I'm monitoring this number, and it's growing. Recently, it's snowballing now. This is the encouraging information. People are awakening, and it is spreading faster and faster. And so this is, this is announcement of my next presentation, actually outside of Copenhagen. Yes. So the other day we had the European premiere actually of this movie, and 135 people were squeezed into a room which could only take 100. So we're doing quite well. So now everybody knows that everybody knows that everybody knows. And this is an editorial reading of the Danish newspaper, and they hate us. They hate animals, this one in particular, because it is shitting all over. Yeah, and it smells, and they hate us, but they don't talk about it. How much do I have? 3 minutes?
Oh,
well,
yeah, sorry, I have 3 minutes. But
3 minutes. So
well,
then
maybe take another question, you know?
No. But I can show you a very funny video of a Danish Prime Minister, which I have to skip. I could say a few words about debunkers and infiltrators, how we deal with them, but we don't have time, according to Noel. The impact of the omnipresent lie I think, is very important, because we have a society now which is characterized by fear and the omnipresent lie. And that means that language is deteriorating. There's something we cannot talk about. Look at the arts, look at music, theaters, films, movies, what's happening? Absolutely nothing. And this is because the language is deteriorating, and this is the greatest threat to our civilization. We accepted the lies, at least the Danish press. They don't relate to whether the politician is lying or not. They relate to, is it very clever to lie now, or maybe he or she should have said this or that. They don't relate to the issue. Deterioration of language. We are facing a monetary global meltdown very soon. Everybody who follows the real issue of our financial system knows this. And October is high season for financial collapses. So beware. So there will coming up social change when this happens, and it will happen. We don't know when, we don't know the scenario, but we are facing economic collapse. When this happens, we'll see social change to an extent which is without precedence in our Western civilization. I've symbolized this with this wave here, and so this is social change. What shall we do? I believe the 9/11 is decisive for where things will go. If it falls to the wrong side, it's called fascism. The other side, which we should work on, is we don't have a word for that, even though Clive actually proposed something, but you cannot put a word for what you imagine it should be. I believe the 9/11 truth is the key to shifting this, whatever may happen, to the proper side. So we should rig our little vessel called truth and ride the wave and be persistent. Thank you for your attention.